This is the Kestrel Country Podcast, where we discuss the people, places, and events all around Kestrel Country. So, Nick, Studt, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Talk a little bit about hunting. It's hunting season. Well, depending on what you're hunting and everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wanted to. I think it's always fun to talk about hunting, but particularly somebody from the Midwest. Are you from the Midwest? I should start.
Yeah, I'm actually from Wisconsin. So,
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, being from Michigan, you know, it's like I've got. I feel like there's always a little bit of a kindred spirit there.
Yeah.
Of Midwest whitetail hunters, right?
Yeah.
But now you're in Idaho, like I am, and doing the Western thing. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk through what maybe that change was like and a little bit of your background.
Yeah.
So I always like to get started with, where'd you grow up? Talk about Wisconsin.
Yep.
And what was it like growing up in Wisconsin?
Yeah, Wisconsin has a very rich hunting heritage and culture. And so actually hunting very much is generational, and I think it still is to this day that way. And so I'll start there. In the early 80s, my grandfather bought with a couple of his teaching buddies a hunting cabin with 40 acres in northern Wisconsin. And so before I could remember, I was introduced to this culture of hunting, and there's pictures of me at 2 or 3 years old behind big whitetail bucks that were killed in that camp. And I was fascinated by, I didn't hunt until I think my dad brought me maybe 5 or 6. But before that, even I remember waiting for the men to come back and see the success. And it just enthralled me. I went head over heels into it. And my dad was a hunter, and he did the kind of opening weekend, maybe 3-day weekend thing.
It's like a holiday back there.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. School shut down the schools for a week. There's a 9-day gun deer season in Wisconsin. And, by the time I could hunt, I was ready. And I killed my first whitetail buck at 12 years old. And then I was already looking, at realizing that you could bow hunt these things for almost 4 months. And so at 13, I bought a bow, and my dad was not a bow hunter, but I kind of taught myself how to shoot, and I killed my first buck with a bow at 14. And I was head over heels, for the sport. And
that's awesome.
Did a lot of stuff on my own, and being a bow hunter, it's just, you have so much more opportunity, than that 9-day deer season. And, did a lot of hunting through high school and into college. And then my wife and I got married when we were pretty young, and realized that I could actually get a substantial amount of meat, doing hunting. I think that's where it clicked for me, and I became what I'll say is a meat hunter. As a priority.
Is that different than so you're talking about it being generational and your grandpa buying this place and all that. Was that a shift because of you getting older, or was that a shift from the way your family hunted? Or did you eat a lot of deer growing up and a lot of venison and that kind of thing?
Not really. No, I think that was a something that shifted for my own journey. Really prioritizing the meat and figuring that out. I think, I had other older men kind of teach me how to process the deer and really get into that whole process. And that's to this day is a big part of what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. I wonder if it's funny because I had a little bit of a similar experience, not generationally. In fact, I'm kind of the first one in my family to get into hunting. My dad didn't, my grandparents didn't. But it seems like the guys that I kind of learned to hunt from and that kind of thing, in Michigan, it was much more of the you know, they would eat venison, of course, like they'd eat what they killed, but it was like you get the deer, you drop it off at the processor, and you know, it was like there wasn't much of that DIY or getting into actually butchering the animals or anything else. I mean, I don't know if that's just happened to be where I learned or what, but did you grow up? Was it rural Wisconsin, or did you have to travel out, like travel north to get into hunt and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I did have to do some traveling to get to this hunting cabin, but like I got to the point where, you know, as I was beginning bow hunting, I did it wherever I was. And so we lived out in the country. And so I remember, you know, walking out from our house and going out into some public land and trying to kill a deer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's somewhat similar. It's funny. I had the friends I hunted with that kind of got me into it. They had 40 acres up in the UP, up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, with a cabin. It was like, that's kind of the thing, right? Like that's what you do. Yeah. Buy 40 acres up in the woods. And were you, or was your grandpa's place up, like northeast, northwest?
Northwest Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other side of the state. Because where I went was pretty close to Superior, Wisconsin. So it was like way up in the UP.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But yeah.
We were probably maybe an hour south of Superior. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So you got into it in high school, started doing more bow hunting. And what was your success like once you got into bow hunting?
Yeah, I think so. In Wisconsin, you know, the license structure is pretty simple. There's a you can buy a rifle deer tag and a bow deer tag. So the bow hunting was a way for me to shoot $2 a year. And then Wisconsin, I kind of ended up living in a kind of suburban rural interface area where you could basically buy as many doe tags as you wanted. So I would get my reps with a bow, shooting does and putting those in the freezer. And then bow hunting, to me, you know, what it became was like the pursuit for a mature buck. And I would stack up the does along the way. And then rifle season is just, let's get something in the freezer. It's 9 days. You don't have a lot of time to be picky. Yeah. And so kind of the evolution for me was like getting deer on the ground every year. And it was forks and spikes and whatever I saw. And then the switch kind of flipped when I killed like my first like nice buck. Like, this is what it looks like to pass up something smaller and wait and be patient. And fortunately, because I was so motivated by the meat, I was able to do that by shooting does with the bow. And I could, you know, pass up a lot of small bucks, knowing that like I was putting meat in the freezer. And so it took a while for me to be consistently successful with a bow. You know, I was always successful with a rifle, but a bow, it took me probably 5 to 6 years to be like every year putting something on the ground. So
was that, no, I forgot where I was going to go with that. Were you tree stand hunting pretty much exclusively with your bow?
Yeah.
And then rifle, was that tree stand? Was it like ground blind?
Yeah, the hunting cabin sat on only 40 acres, but it was connected to thousands of acres of county land. It's just big woods up there. And so I would go back into this county land like basically a mile was kind of the furthest you could get from a road, and carry a stand on my back and climb up in a tree, you know, an hour before opening day. And that's kind of how I hunted all the time. I started hunting on the ground.
Mostly sitting still.
Yeah.
All day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Patience game, mentally very difficult to do that, but you know, it paid off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, obviously we were going to talk about shifting to the West, but I feel like that's one of the big differences, at least that I've experienced.
Yeah.
So I guess to back that up, how did you hunt out West here before moving here? Was that something how did that kind of evolution happen?
Yeah. So my brother-in-laws had been going to Montana a few years before I first started hunting out west. So 2018, 5 years ago or so, was the first time I hunted elk.
Okay.
And it was going with my brother-in-laws who had experience. And so I was fortunate enough to like kind of climb that learning curve a little bit, experience it. And like, funny enough, like I killed my first bull elk on the 4th day of archery hunting, which is like, yeah,
unbelievable
miracle, basically. I mean,
public land too.
Yeah, public land. Just myself and my brother-in-law called him in and killed him at like 25 yards, and it was like, yeah, how hard is this? Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, and I had the Montana combo tag where you can kill a deer and an elk, and actually on the 2nd day I killed a whitetail buck up at like 8,000 feet, and I was like, man, this is really cool. And then packed it out, and then 2 days later killed that elk, and man, I just couldn't believe how much fun it was to be active. And we were in kind of what people describe as a rut fest, like bulls screaming everywhere. And one other guy we were with actually missed a bull right before I shot mine, and so we were in multiple elk, and it was just incredible. That the vocalization of a bull elk is just amazing. So I was completely hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had that been something, obviously you said your brothers-in-law or brother, I don't know how you say that, but brother-in-laws,
yeah.
brothers-in-law, they had done it before. Growing up, had you thought, dreamed of hunting out west, that kind of thing, dreamed of elk, or mostly just like focused on deer hunting in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think elk hunting to a Wisconsin hunter seems like the pinnacle and like a natural progression. And, of course, dreamed of it, but didn't realize I kind of associate it with like, oh, you go with a guide or you pay a bunch of money. And it wasn't something that I figured was like attainable for me. And then you realize like you can go do this. And this is like before like the YouTube sensation of everyone wants to go out west. And it was, you buy a tag and you split gas and you could do it. And so it was, something that, didn't realize like I could do until, a couple of years before we ended up doing it. So,
and was that pretty accessible then? Over the counter tag?
Yeah. At the time, you had to put in for a non-resident combo. And at the time it was basically 100% success to draw that tag. Okay. And now that is not the case. They have a cap on non-residents. I think it's 17,000, and they more than, sell out. So it's become like a once every maybe 1 to 3 year hunt.
So you did that before it was really super popular.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Where at Montana was that?
Kind of north central Montana. And actually, again, generationally, my wife's grandfather owns a cabin there.
Oh, wow.
He's from Wisconsin, and he's been going there for probably 35 years. So, yeah, making it accessible was a big piece of it.
Yeah.
It's like having a home base, kind of having a rough idea of the country. Now we hunted it differently than he did at the time, but so it made it seem attainable because other people were doing it.
Yeah. Well, she's obviously then your wife from a hunting family.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that
she's used to it, understands what it's like, the experience of being gone and dealing with wild game too.
Right. Yeah. She grew up on venison and understood, what we do as hunters. And so that was huge for sure.
Yeah. Does she get involved? Does your family get involved with butchering and processing the game and all that as well?
Yeah, that's a big part of what we enjoy doing as a family. So, I get an elk and bring it home, and everyone's helping, the littler kids are, labeling bags or doing things like that. But, we grind, our own meat and like eating a lot of the steaks. So, yeah.
Yeah. So once 2018, got your first elk archery hunting. Did you continue to come out west then? When did you guys move here?
We moved here in spring of 2020.
Okay.
Yep. So went back in 2019, and just with my schedule and things, I ended up just going during rifle season. And, I think, man, the third day I killed a bull. And so I was like, I was in elk hunting.
Like, this is easier than whitetail.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like the biggest bull I've, to this day have shot, and was with my two brother-in-laws again. And, we packed it out, and then, we had 3 tags and worked our butt off for 3 more days. And we ended up getting a double. We killed my brother. They both killed.
Oh, wow.
And so we killed 3 bulls in like 4 days.
That's amazing.
Which is just like, again, a miracle. Every time you kill an elk, it feels like it's a miracle. The way it comes together. So,
yeah. So you came back again. With those experiences, did that diminish your interest in hunting whitetail in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think, so at the time, I think 2016, I bought a hunting property in Wisconsin with my dad. So, and I kind of managed it for, like, you see the classic Midwest whitetail management, food plots and tree stands, and kind of strategizing around minimizing pressure. And it was a 110 acre chunk. So it was a decent size for Wisconsin. And, so that was what I did most of the time for hunting prep. And then after I killed that first elk, my passion shifted pretty dramatically. And I was like, couldn't stop thinking about killing another elk. And yeah, I would say, like, to this day, like, elk hunting is my favorite type of hunting. And then we moved out here in 2020 and knew that's what one of the things I wanted to do here was figure out Idaho elk hunting.
Did that have a factor into you guys moving out here?
Yeah, I think it was not a primary driver, but it was like icing, like, and it's in Idaho. In addition to the other reasons why we moved to this area.
Yeah, but you had some exposure to the West. Yeah.
And I started to feel that pull, like, even more so after being in Montana a couple times, like, towards the West. I wanted to be somewhere out here. And we landed in Moscow. So
yeah, you said that elk's your favorite thing to hunt.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think I had always viewed it as kind of a natural progression. When I was in Wisconsin, like, oh yeah, someday I'll hunt elk. And I kind of viewed it at the time as like the ultimate challenge. And they're just a big animal. Like, being a meat hunter, like, that's a big driver. Like, you put one of those things on the ground and your freezer's pretty good for the year. Whereas in Wisconsin, I'd shoot 6-8 deer a year to make our freezer last. And so I think that, along with just, you can't beat hunting a bull elk in September, being so vocal and aggressive. So I think the size combined with just the excitement of pursuing them in September is what makes me think, yeah, they're the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when I shot my first elk, it was rifle, so it wasn't screaming and running around or anything like that, but just walking up to it, it was a spike. It wasn't even a big elk. Just thinking, like, this is the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. This thing is huge.
Yeah.
You're used to deer on the ground. You're like, man, this thing is enormous.
Yeah. And you're right. And still every elk I kill is like, wow, these things are so big. And, especially when you're able to interact with them when they're on the hoof at, 10 yards, 15 yards, like, it's incredible how big they are. And yeah, it's just super exciting to hunt them.
So that first bull you killed, you said you called it into 25 yards.
Yeah.
Was that you had some experience, or that your brothers-in-law were bow hunters as well?
Yeah.
Then,
Yep.
so they had some experience calling and dealing with it.
Yep.
Did you mostly learn from them, or how did you kind of figure out the whole calling thing?
Yeah, I think that first hunt, like my brother-in-law was the caller, and he, it was my first time. He wanted to like see if we can get something for me, and so it was because of his experience that I killed that bull, and definitely learned a lot on the fly. And then like after the hooks were in me, like I did my own, like I took it, as soon as I got home, like I'm trying to figure out like how can I do this on my own. So
what did you find some resources back in 2018? Like you said, it was a little bit before the YouTube boom anyway.
Right. Yeah, there was stuff out there on YouTube still, but it was not as big as what it is now. So yeah, I was looking at YouTube. I was reading articles, talking to anybody I could that had done it before, and I was ready to go back.
Is that something you really enjoy? Is the calling aspect of it?
I think, I definitely do enjoy that, and enjoy the pursuit with a bow. But one thing I really love about Idaho is, and really what drew me to bow hunt originally was not like I didn't have a fascination or a desire to like specifically use a bow. It was like what it allowed me to do from a season structure standpoint and from a timing standpoint. And so very much like that in Idaho, it's like, well, if you want to hunt elk in September, which is during the rut and the best time to find elk, you need to use a bow. So I'm not a bow purist or anything like that. I use a rifle. I enjoy rifle hunting. In Idaho, you can have some really great opportunities with a muzzleloader. And so it's just whatever the most lethal weapon is when I can hunt is what I love to pick up. So
yeah. But like you said, there's something about that interaction with the animals in the rut that's just that's really hard to beat.
Right. Yeah. Especially where we are here in northern Idaho, you really need to have the elk vocal. You're not glassing more than likely. You need to have them talking to find them. And they are pretty vocal up here because of just how thick it is.
Was it in Montana where you were in Montana? Is it pretty open?
Yeah, relatively. Yeah, compared to here, for sure.
You're able to glass up
herds
and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So after getting here, was that kind of an eye opener? Your first time was the first time hunting in Idaho, 2020. When you moved here?
Yeah. So when I moved, it was June, and in Idaho, when you're coming here as a non-resident, you have to, in order for you to buy a resident tag, you have to live here for 6 months. And so I knew I was going to hunt elk my first year here. And so I bought basically a non-resident tag and paid the extra amount. And it was a tough first year, but got like a couple close calls with the bow. I bought an A tag for around here. And so that's primarily archery focused with some other like rifle and muzzleloader opportunities as well. Kind of got my teeth kicked in a little bit, like worked my butt off pretty hard. And then the very last opportunity of the season for the tag I had was in December. There's like a few days that you can hunt cow elk with a muzzleloader. And I think I killed on like the 4th or 5th day of trying to fill that tag. And so I punched my first elk tag in Idaho with a cow elk.
Yeah. Was that the first time you hunted with a muzzleloader?
No, there was also like a muzzleloader opportunity in Wisconsin. So I had a little bit of experience. Like after the 9-day rifle season, there was a little bit of a primitive season where if you didn't punch your tag, you could try it. So I had a muzzleloader because of that, but didn't really, not a ton of experience with it. So that was my first time.
Was there snow on the ground? And
there was a little bit of snow. Yep. So And then that time of year, the elk are starting to come down out of the mountains. And so they're a little bit more accessible in some of the foothills and starting to maybe flirt with like on the private land a little bit. But so they're easier to find. But so I was pretty pleased.
That was your first experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you get into many elk when you were during the archery season?
Yeah. I did get into some elk. And again, couldn't believe how thick it was here. And so a couple times I did get into some really good calling action with some bulls and, had some bulls come in, even less than 30 yards and I could not see them.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't believe it. Like, how am I going to kill these things? I cannot, see 10 yards. And so there's a couple of situations where that was my shooting lane, was like 10 yards out. So waiting for the bull to come in and just couldn't seal the deal on anything. But yeah, certainly seen enough to have me excited about getting that same tag again the next year.
Yeah. I got to reset this camera really quick. It runs out of time. Yeah, I think one of the things it's funny is there's so much that goes into it, right? And that's one of the things that's fun about it is it's so hard, right? There's just like all these factors that can go wrong or have to go just right to make it work. But I think up North Idaho, one of those is just figuring out how to be like have that encounter and then have it actually go right. Like be in a position where you have the shooting lane or you have that opportunity.
Right.
I know I kept year after year, I would just get elk close and then be like, why am I hiding behind this thing that now it's like, I feel like I don't want to be seen, but now I've just created a situation where I don't have a shot. And yeah, my experience was definitely not like yours in terms of getting one 4 days in. But I think it took a lot of years of trial and error.
Yeah.
But
I think that's an important point to, for somebody transitioning from whitetail hunting. I think the tendency is for them to not be aggressive enough and to, feel like you need to sneak around in the woods. I do not sneak around in the woods. You realize pretty quickly that elk are loud animals. They're herd animals. And so if they hear a stick pop, that's normal to them. And so that's one thing I learned hunting here in Idaho is like, you need to be aggressive and make something happen because, what you see on TV where the bull elk comes screaming in, that rarely happens. And so you need to like make an opportunity for yourself and make a shot happen. Otherwise it's not going to happen.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I think I had a lot of that as well. Now, what about scent? Because I feel like that's something too where I don't know what your experience was, but in Michigan, like we would be so careful, right? Like you have your separate bag for your hunting clothes and you're washing them scent free, you're shampooing scent free, and then just being so careful with everything. But you're also sitting in a stand, so you're not sweating and running around. How was that shift for you coming out west?
Yeah, I was the same way in Wisconsin. Is being super careful. And I think you had the benefit in Wisconsin or the Midwest of, controlling the situation a little bit more. So I go hunt a stand when the wind's right. And you are sitting there and your scent's going everywhere. And so like, what can we do to minimize that impact that we're having on that pressure of the deer we're hunting? Whereas out here, you're going to stink. I mean, you're hiking around, you're sweating.
It's 80 degrees.
Yeah. So it's like you realize pretty quickly, like, I'm always going to stink. And so I need to hunt the wind. You're not going to fool an elk. And so you kind of have the benefit of being able to kind of go into a situation where you're approaching an elk or a herd where you kind of understand what the thermals are doing, what the prevailing wind's doing, and like you can optimize your approach based on that. But yeah, there's nothing you can do to control the fact that you are going to smell bad to an elk. So that was a huge shift for me. Like now I don't I don't do anything special with my clothes. I don't hang them. I used to hang them outside, and I just smell bad all the time.
Yeah.
When I'm hunting.
You just really have to pay attention to the wind.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So first year was a muzzleloader cow.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do year 2?
Yeah. So year 2,
you were a resident then.
Yep. So I'm officially a resident. I was immediately doing research on just like the structure here is completely different than I was used to.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out like elk zones and units, and there's this opportunity for a controlled hunt where there's just better opportunity, lower pressure, potentially, more trophy potential. And so I was just like digging into Idaho. I was the kind of kid who read the regulations from cover to cover when I was like 12 years old. So I was doing that, trying to figure out like, how can I maximize my opportunity here? And I made the decision that year, like, as a Idaho resident, starting like, I think August 1st or something, you can buy a second elk tag. But you have to pay non-resident prices for it. And I decided I'm going to buy 2 elk tags this year. And, I'm trying to catch up here. I started elk hunting when I'm, 30 years old, and I'm trying to figure this out. And to me, it was like the best opportunity is like, how can I just hunt more units, hunt more tags?
So it was less about, I want to get 2 elk on the ground, more about, obviously you did, but more about getting different units, different opportunities.
Yeah. I was trying to like climb the learning curve and figure it out. And, so that second year I bought another A tag, and then I drew a muzzleloader opportunity kind of in southern Idaho. So I hunted hard during the archery season. I got closer than I did the year previous to killing a bull, but just didn't go perfect. So I did not kill with a bow that year. And with the tag I had, there's a short little window of rifle opportunity. And the opening day of that season, I killed a spike. And I was just super excited. Like my first bull in Idaho.
Yeah.
And got something on the ground, and spikes are like the best meat on the mountain, in my opinion. And so I was super happy. And then
was that Palouse zone? You're in this area, generally speaking?
Yeah, just a little bit. Well, I was on the kind of the southern part of the Panhandle unit.
So it was a Panhandle A tag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I went on to hunt this muzzleloader season down south, and never been there before. I do most of my hunting by myself. So I'm kind of like packing it out on my own, figuring it out on my own. And this unit down south, I kind of heard a little bit about it, but just kind of went down there completely blind. And when I'm, going into a unit like that, I really try to spend a lot of time understanding, like, what does the access look like? How do I don't even really quote scout for the elk. I'm more just like trying to figure out, how do I drive around on this unit? How do I access this country? Where are other people accessing this country? And kind of like formulate my plan based on who I see, what I see, where the access or areas are. And, this country, I very quickly found elk. And I hunted it for a few days. I missed a big bull on the first day. And then decided to come back at the end of the season, which was the end of the November in this case.
Okay.
And
so it was a pretty long muzzleloader season.
All in November.
Okay.
And this unit is doesn't get pressured with a rifle. There's no general rifle season. So, the bulls can get pretty big. And so I went back, after Thanksgiving, and first day I killed a bull, like first branch antler. It was like a smaller 5-point, but my first like branch antler bull in Idaho. And I was just like super excited. Like, and it was
two elk in 1 year.
2 elk in 1 year.
Amazing.
And yeah, my freezer was great. And, that was that season pretty much. And throughout this whole time, I'm deer hunting, but it's like it's an afterthought. Like, oh, there's a deer, I'll go shoot it. It's not like a focus. It hasn't been a focus for me in Idaho yet. But
there's some big whitetails around here.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. I see pictures.
I feel like I can't get that Midwest out of me. It's like I still, of course, if I had the opportunity to shoot a big old bull or a big whitetail, I'd shoot the bull.
Yeah.
But there's something in me that's just like, and I never did shoot a big whitetail back home either. So it's like, I still want to get that big whitetail.
Yeah.
There are some of them out here. It's not the cornfields of the Midwest, but there's some big ones.
Oh yeah, for sure. There is.
So you connected on that muzzleloader hunt. And then I guess we're kind of moving fast, but the following year back to bow again. This would have been last year, 2022.
Yeah. Last year. Yep. So last year, what I did was, I had been putting in for, Wyoming, I don't know, for the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And so my 2 tags last year were, I had the Panhandle A tag again, same tag I've been buying every year since I moved here. And then I drew a Wyoming General tag.
Okay.
So, I hunted again hard and with the bow. And then my brother-in-law, the same one that, kind of introduced me to hunting out west, he came with his family to visit, and he didn't have a tag, but he just came with me and kind of called and worked some elk with me. And we ended up, I killed a bull, actually a pretty nice 5x6 bull with the bow with him.
Awesome.
On like September 24th.
Okay.
And I just really love that last week in September here. I've just had really good luck, and I shouldn't say this, but like nobody hunts that last week. And so I run into less people. And I don't know, people are kind of burnt out from like, using their vacation or using up time at home or whatever. And I run into less people, and the bulls are just really fired up that last week.
I feel like that's shifted though, honestly. Even just, I haven't been hunting that long out here, but when I first started archery elk hunting, it was like first week or like September 15th, like that's the peak of the rut. And that's, and had a little bit of that experience, but even then I feel like it was shifting, and it seems like the last number of years it's been shifting later and later to where, you'll run into elk fired up, bugling their heads off in the rifle season, like into October.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know what, I actually had that thought. I would be interesting to talk to somebody from Fish and Game. I was like, I wonder if Fish and Game would take some of that stuff into account. Maybe it's just around here, but if it's the kind of thing that's happening more statewide, you wonder if they'd shift some of the seasons around a little bit. Because, I mean, if you're a rifle hunter and you want that opportunity, obviously it's great to have bugling elk. But when you're trying to manage a statewide population, having bugling elk running around during rifle season is not necessarily a way to make sure that the herd continues on,
Right.
So that's awesome. So you got your first archery elk in Idaho.
Yep.
And then what was Wyoming like?
Wyoming was, at least the area I went to was pretty incredible. It was a rifle season, so I decided to go down. It was like early October again. So like the bulls were bugling. The country was pretty open. So, pretty quickly found elk and keyed in on them. There was a lot of hunters, a lot of guys on horseback. I backpacked it into an area where I knew there was elk. But I did spend like a day driving around. I always like to do that. Just like drive around, see where the roads are, see where the people are. I picked a spot and basically said, I put a couple days worth of food on my back and said I was going to keep hiking until I found elk. This was the day before season, and I found a herd and just camped there. And I shot a bull the next day.
So how far back were you?
It was like 4 miles.
And was this by yourself again?
Yeah. So
you got to be putting in some work in the off season to be in good enough shape.
Oh yeah,
to be doing that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I use as one of my motivators to like get my butt out of bed in the morning and work out, eat relatively clean, and like I know it's going to pay off, September, October, November when I'm packing a bull out. So elk hunting is a weird combination of just like super low impact hiking, and then all of a sudden you got 100 pounds on your back. So it's like you got to be relatively fit, but you're not just going to be running to get in shape for elk hunting. You need to be strong.
Yeah. Is that, you think that's a big contributor to your success in terms of being willing to, because I noticed you kept saying like, I'm not necessarily scouting for elk as much as almost like, seems like what you're saying, scouting for other people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So getting back where a lot of people aren't willing to go. And
yeah, I think nothing ever crosses my mind about this elk is too far away from the road. Like I don't even think about that. And I think a lot of hunters do think about that.
I'll be honest. I do.
So like I figure that out late after the elk's on the ground, and maybe I regret where it is, but ultimately like it doesn't drive the decision to where to hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's got to be, some of that has to be obviously putting in that work ahead of time to be confident enough to not be, as I'll admit for sure, like there are years when I've probably never been quite in good enough shape to really be elk hunting, but there's where you're like, I just know I'm not in good enough shape to want to go all the way down to the bottom of that canyon on the other side and get something and get it all the way back out.
Yeah.
Putting in the work. And I think that's one of the things about archery. Well, all hunting makes that difference, right? Because you mentioned back home, you're planning out food plots, putting up multiple stands. You're putting in the work off season. It's just a different type of work.
Yeah.
But having that, working with, your bow, working out, making sure you're planning, all of that, there's a lot that goes into it to make sure you're, one, prepared, and I think personally, two, confident enough.
Right.
To because that's a big part of it is just that confidence of like, no, I can go in there and I can kill that elk.
Yeah.
And I know I can place the shot where I need to. I know I can call him in, right?
Right.
Confidence is a big part of it.
Oh yeah. I think confidence is huge because you will decide to do things that maybe you're not even prepared to do if you're confident. So, I would say, even though I do the prep work off season, nothing prepares you for hunting elk like hunting elk does. But, so your body's going to hurt, but you're confident enough to do it. You can, and I'm not the fastest hiker, but I just kind of slog away and get it done.
So this year, pretty fresh. I saw a picture. You had some success this year, right?
Yeah, I did.
In Jed's elk hunting competition or big game comp. We should give a shout out to Jed.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah. So this year was a little bit different for me. I wanted to try something different than I had in the past, and so I did not buy the A-tag panhandle. I bought two elk. I had two elk tags again this year.
Okay.
But I bought an A-tag for down south where I had muzzleloader hunted in the past. So I knew the country. I knew there's elk there. It's an over-the-counter archery opportunity. And then my oldest daughter is 11, and so she can hunt in Idaho. And so we got her the B tag in Panhandle, and then I said, well, if I'm going to go with her, I might as well have a tag too. So my second tag was the B tag Panhandle, and that's what I killed that bull on the second day. She came with me on the first day, brought her into school a little bit late that morning, and then she was going to just focus on school for the rest of the week. And then I had keyed in on this herd that we saw with her, but we weren't mobile enough to make something happen with her there. And then I went back the next day knowing that if the herd was doing the same thing, I was going to kill one. And yeah, did that opening or that second morning, killed that little bull.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have success in Southern Idaho then?
No. So I went down there for 4 days with the bow. And I was in elk every day. I was close to killing elk on 3 of the days. But that country is so different. It's very open. There's a lot of elk. But you gotta, basically I would get one good stalk a day. And I wasn't calling at all. I was finding elk, watching them go to bed, and then sneaking in on them.
Wow.
And once in a while I would try calling a little bit as I got close, but, it was a blast. Like I felt like I was hunting elk the whole time. Whereas, oftentimes when you're elk,
because you knew they were there.
yeah, you were just like, I kind of put elk hunting into two categories. You spend, and the behaviors are a little bit different. One is finding elk, is very different than once you found elk, now you're hunting them. And so I always want to be hunting elk, not looking for elk as much as I possibly can. And down there, I felt like I was always hunting elk, and in elk. So I don't really like hiking if I'm not in elk. Hiking is fun and I enjoy it, but it's not my preference.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's one of those things. One of the reasons why archery elk hunting, or at least hunting during the rut in North Idaho, is so much more fun, is because like you're if you're doing it right, if they're vocal, you're into the elk, right?
Yeah.
Versus a little bit of my experience in the rifle season has been like, well, I'm hiking around with my rifle and maybe we'll run into some elk. I don't really know because I can't see them. We can't hear them, and maybe they're here, which is always tough.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the questions we had to cover was getting your kids into hunting. So you touched on that a little bit. How did your daughter like it? Did she enjoy it?
Yeah, I think, so like I started getting my kids into hunting back in Wisconsin, and I will say it's very different, to try to do that well here, because I would never take my kids on a hunt like I really enjoy doing here, because of the difficulty of it. And so I think, there's been a desire, to just come with me, by my kids, and I'm not pushing it. Like if one of my girls or, my sons will ask, like, of course they can come. But it's not something where it's like, you're going hunting, with me. And I try to make it, so the type of hunt I would do with my kids, is, completely different category than I would go on my own. And so like the level of difficulty is much less, easier walking, closer to the truck. And then just try to make it fun. Like, yeah, we got candy, we got snacks. It's kind of part of the experience. And then, don't plan on hunting too long. And, it's almost more about the experience than the success. And then the areas where I would take my kids are kind of what I would categorize as just like generally more game, maybe not that big trophy potential, but we'll see deer.
Give them an opportunity to see something.
Yeah. And even if it's not what we're after, when I took my daughter out, like we saw a nice bull moose, with a cow, and it was really cool. And, we didn't get an elk. We saw a lot of deer. Like those types of things are experiences that, most people don't get to have, with their kids. And so, because it's something that I'm passionate about, like my kids are naturally just kind of interested in it. And, I view this as a way for me to, kind of have the ability for me to do something with my kids, like after they're moved on. Like I have 2 boys and 4 girls, and I view this as a way for me to, do something with my boys when they're my age, or when they have kids. So to me, it's like a long-term play. And someday, Lord willing, I'll have, 4 son-in-laws that I could hunt with. And so part of what I'm trying to do is like build this, inventory of like, here's the spots. Here's the, I'm always thinking about like, oh, I could get my son in there. Like, so I'm just kind of, I want to pass that on to my son, like it was passed on to me. So yeah, that's really what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Do you think you'll do some more whitetail hunting, like because seems like that's a little more accessible to youth, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's, I guess, one of my lessons learned this year is I maybe had my expectations set a little bit too high for what my daughter would, be interested in doing. As far as what it does take to kill an elk is actually, the bar's pretty high, and so I think one thing I've got coming up is her and I both have a mule deer tag in November.
Oh, cool.
It's a rifle, rut hunt for mule deer. So we're planning to. I'm probably going to go out by myself first and see if I can find a couple opportunities where she could get in pretty easily, and so I think, yeah, you're right. I think the deer hunting is much more accessible for kids, and I hadn't yet done any hunting on private land yet, but I think that could also present potential opportunity for accessible to kids.
Yeah. Have you mule deer hunted before, or will this be the first mule deer hunt?
Last year I killed my first mule deer in Idaho. I'd killed one mule deer in Montana. Okay. And so, yeah, last year I got the same tag as I got this year, just south of here, a couple hours. And, so yeah, it's my second time.
What do you think about mule deer hunting versus whitetail?
I actually really enjoy it. Maybe it's because it's different than what I'm accustomed to, but I really like the country where they're at, and it's a little bit more open, and yeah, it's just, I think it's maybe more about the places where they are that kind of are interesting to me. And I do obviously enjoy where whitetails are too, but mule deer are just they're high up on the mountain and in big country, and not as much in like the farm country around here. Are
you sitting still out and watching them?
I can't sit still anymore.
That's what I was going to ask. That's funny because I tried that a couple of years ago. I was like, I'm going to go sit in my tree stand. I got one up. I was like, I'm here for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, I wonder if they're over there.
No.
I wonder if they're over there. I gotta get up and move.
I used to sit for 13 hours in a deer stand, and I cannot sit still anymore. Like, I'm always wondering, like, what's over the next ridge. And sometimes to my detriment, like, I cannot be patient enough in certain scenarios, but I'm always wondering there's something I'm missing. Like, if I'm sitting here so long, and this country is just so big, and relatively speaking, the density of animals is less than what I'm, grew up hunting. And so there's some sense that, like, you really maybe can't sit as much as, we would do in the Midwest, but
yeah,
definitely a shift for me.
Yeah. Well, do you have any plans for next year? Obviously you got your mule deer hunt still this year, getting your daughter out. Any plans for next year with your kids?
Well, I think, one thing that actually, I'm wanting to do is I want my son to experience kind of that similar culture that I experienced in Wisconsin. So, love to get him actually back, because he's 8, and so he cannot shoot a big game animal in Idaho yet. You have to be 10 years old, and so in Wisconsin there's he can actually hunt himself. Oh, really? And he's been really after me to shoot something. So I might be taking him back and have him kind of experience that deer camp culture, and maybe get him his first deer. But aside from that, I think one thing that I have learned this year is, like, some of the best tags are the tags that are right out your back door. Like, I mentioned that going down south and around Idaho, there's just so many places you could go. So it's like, I'm always wondering, I want to try something new, but there's so much benefits to having that tag, 30 minutes away from your house, because you can kind of optimize your time. And, I've got a young family. I've got a lot of responsibilities here. And so it makes it more easier for me to be successful when I've got a tag right around here.
And so it's different.
Yeah,
for sure. You're not putting as much consecutive time in.
Right.
But you're able to get that. And I think especially as you're like, that's been my experience as kids get older too. And there's all these activities.
Yeah.
I know your daughter's playing volleyball.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, there's
Yep.
just, it's harder to get away for longer periods of time. And it makes it's kind of a different shift for a time period anyway.
Yeah, I think, and you're right with just everything going on here. And then also like you can just really hunt when it's the best time. And so, when you're archery hunting, in northern Idaho, you want to be hunting when there's a bull that's talking. And so, for me to travel somewhere and have to spend a day where there's no activity is, it's hard for me to, wait it out, and not get back to what I need to do here. And so when I'm close by, I can like pick and choose like, oh, the weather's good, or I'm going to go check these couple drainages. And if there's no hot bull, I'm going into work or, getting stuff done at home. So I can kind of like maximize my time, at this current stage really makes a lot of sense for me. So,
yeah, good. Awesome. Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Fun talking about it. And
oh yeah. I love
it always
talking
gets
about
me
this.
fired up. It's like, hey, it's good to talk about it, but getting out in the woods is what's really fun.
Yeah.
So I still have a whitetail tag in my pocket. So I'm hoping to hunt the rut and see if I can't get a decent buck this year. But yeah.
That's great. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week.